YouTube community, Who fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we're here today to talk about the Who's last album with Keith Moon. Who Are You? Who, released August 18th, 1978. Hit number 2 in the US and number 6 in the UK. I think it was number 6. I might be wrong about that. And this is a really interesting album in their collection because it sounds, for me anyway, it sounds totally different from anything they'd done before. Which is interesting because the whole idea of the first song on this album kind of says, aren't you tired of hearing the same thing over and over again? To which the rest of the album says, let's just do something different over and over again. So, at this point in The Who's career, there had been a pretty lengthy break in between albums, between The Who by Numbers in 1975, and then this one coming out at the end of 1978, only a few weeks before Keith Moon unfortunately passed away, which a lot of reviewers at the time noted the cherry sitting on says not to be taken away. So it's really sad that this was like a, not like a foreshadow, but just maybe not ironic or coincidence. I'm not sure what the word would be, but sad is a good word to use. I've always loved this album cover. I think it's great to see them behind the stage with the back of their amps and all the wires hanging out. I think it's really cool. But like I said, anyway, in 1975 and 76, The Who were on tour, and they were really doing some of the best shows they'd ever done at that point. I think John Entwistle at one point said that era of the band live was one of his favorites because of what they sounded like, which is how tight and well-oiled of a machine they were by that point. But once they split up, they started going their separate ways, either doing solo projects or working on movies. They kind of splintered off. And in that time, unfortunately, Keith, because of his alcoholism and just kind of screwing around, had kind of lost his ability to really focus and play the drums well. And that does show on this album. They're not sloppy, they're not bad, it's just different. It's not the usual stuff you would have heard on Bargain or on Quadrophenia. Or that Keith Moon playing style isn't there, which is sad because literally 1976, only several years before this thing came out, he was on top of his game, just drumming like crazy. So it's sad in that respect that he went out not showing off the best of what he can do. And it was also the beginning of, they were starting to film The Kids Are Alright at this point, and looking backwards, and Keith was seeing videos of himself as, a younger guy in the 60s and early 70s and being like, man, I really gotta get in shape. And Roger was like, yeah, we'll get a gym installed in the studio, we'll get you going. He was ready to get back out and fix things about himself and change his life up. And he started to do that. He was taking medication to get off drinking, so the whole thing was like him trying to better himself. And it was all just an accident the way he went out. So it's really sad. But, this album is very different for me from the rest of their albums. And they kind of do that anyway with each of their albums. They do sound a bit different, but they always had a bit of the, this is The Who. And I guess you do have this on this album too, but this does signal like a new period for them. Lyrically and musically and instrument-wise, this thing's loaded with synthesizers again, just like how, Quadrophenia and Who's Next were, but this just feels like a different version of the band, is what I'm trying to say. New song opens this thing up, and again, it's Pete being Pete. He's kind of saying, I've written this song a million times, do you really want to hear it again? Admit, do you really want to hear it? Is it really that good? Are you really feeling it? It's one of those songs where it's like, it comes across as a little bit cynical, but it's also it makes you think about the rest of the band's catalog. And, at this point, they were all starting to get, quote unquote, a little older. Punk was coming out, things were changing. And they were trying to figure out where they fit in that modern world of rock and roll, whereas beforehand they had been the rock and roll band, or rock band, whatever you want to call them. They had been on top of their game for that, and having been gone for a few years, a lot changed in those 3 years. At this point, disco was huge. Punk had come out, like I said. Things were different now. Where does The Who lay in 1978? What's it going to be like? But I love the synthesizers on this track. Roger's vocals are biting, and the whole thing just chugs along. It rocks. There's a little bit of a key change here and there. It's a cynically enjoyable song, if you want to put it that way. But, Roger sings it like he wrote it, which is, the way he does things. He interprets Pete's lyrics extremely well, like nobody else could ever will. It's just a song about staying relevant and asking yourself and the audience, do you really want more of this? And then the rest of the album literally takes that idea and shoves it out the window and just kind of goes in a whole new way. So, New Song for me is a fascinating example of like, here's my last breath that I can give, but wait a minute, there's more. Had Enough is a really interesting song. Again, more heavy synths on this one, like really synth heavy. You know, Keith's thundering drums on this one I think are fantastic, and they're controlled. They're not like the wild man, falling over his drum set constantly. It's a little bit more restricted, but that works really well for what the song's trying to do. Roger nails it vocally. There's a lot of different parts for him to be a little bit more gentle, and then screaming at the end. And some interesting lines. Life is for the living, take but never giving. It's a really reflective kind of song. The string section I think is really sweet and a little Neil Diamond-esque, if I dare say that myself. I love Neil Diamond, and I think his string arrangements are always fantastic. The middle eight feels like it's out of nowhere, something that The Who has never done before. And that theme continues on the rest of this album. It's just a bunch of stuff they hadn't done before. Whereas on the other albums, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I can see them doing this. But this album kind of throws some curveballs, and that's why I think it's so interesting. But yeah, really dig that track. 905 is one of my favorite songs on this album. I love John's voice on this thing. It's from his abandoned sci-fi rock opera. It's just a badass track that cranks along. I love the computery, synthy bleeps and bloops throughout this thing. Keith's drumming is super tight here. And I can't tell if it's Pete singing along with John or if it's John's double track during the choruses. But it's just an eerie sort of song. The bass line is killer, of course. And it's a story of humans and machines. It's something like H.G. Wells would have written, but a standout of a song for sure. It's just a badass track. I love that song. Sister Disco. It sounds like it's fresh off the rugged ocean waves with that rubbery bass and the suspenseful strings, which I guess the whole ocean imagery does come out because it's, they mentioned stormy seas at one point. The bridge is really stark. The washy synth feel all over this thing is cool. Keith's splashy cymbals are great. The acoustic ending is a really welcome change from the very synthy origins of the rest of the song. So it's got some good dynamics and good changes there. Apparently it's one of the ones that Pete hated playing live because there would be a time where Roger would try to look at them and kind of create this brotherly concept that, was meant to be like, oh, we're friends now, as Pete would put it. But who knows? We'll never know. Music Must Change. This is a very fascinating song, and apparently one of the songs that Keith just could not figure out how to put drums to, because it's in a weird timing. It's 6/8 timing. But because of that, you get a really sparse track, which kind of lets The Who breathe a little bit, which is fascinating. And you get to hear a lot of Pete's noodling around on the guitar. The bass is a little bit more restrained, but still very fun. And Roger's vocals are just top-notch, but you get a really wide range of dynamics on this song, in particular with the vocals, because Roger can be kind of sly, cool, a little edgy but toned back, and then also let it loose like he normally does. So vocally for this song, Roger shines. And the horn arrangement I think is great because it kind of pops up here and there as a bit of a surprise now and then, which I think is fun. And the chorus just builds, the song builds, over and over again. It's just a really fascinating song in their discography because there's nothing like it. And having Keith pop up just on cymbals here and there is just fascinating. So that's side one. Side two starts off with Trick of the Light. And the Ox freaking nails it on this one. I mean, it's easily one of the most rocking songs on this album. It's a song about hoping he's pleased a prostitute. It's like a classic John humor. The riff just shreds. Keith's drumming on this one is awesome. Roger's vocals just tied all together. He just nails it vocally. The guitar fills are awesome. This whole song rock and rolls the whole way through. And there's humor to it, and it's super catchy. It fades out way quicker than other versions. The shorter version is on the LP. Over the years on the CD and other versions, you get a much longer one, about 50 seconds more of it, which is great because the fade out is so fun. Love this song. It's such a good song. Guitar and Pen is revisiting sort of some of the Lifehouse themes, if you will. About songwriting and this song in particular feels like it could have been from a musical. It's got a very boisterous, bouncy, actress sort of back and forth feel to it. Like if it was on stage, I feel like it would have worked really well in some sort of Broadway element. It's just got that kind of energy and liveliness to it that would be, if you're sitting to see, be like, wow, this is a really fun song to watch, that kind of track. It evokes, getting lost in the process of songwriting and picking up your guitar and just kind of noodling around and see what happens. The piano playing in here, I think, is great. And Keith's drumming on this one is probably one of the more energetic drum fills songs for him on this whole album. So for that, I love it. It's a catchy song. Love is coming down rather. This again, another song that sounds nothing like they've done before. It's sweet, it's tender. The piano and the cymbal work is wonderful, and Roger's voice is emotional. It adds such a warmth to the song, which is great. It just brings the house down. The chorus is fantastic. The emotion and the tension it creates, fantastic. There's nothing like it that they had done at this point like that song. And sequencing wise, I think it's unreal, because from there you get this like sweet romantic ballad to one of the best songs they ever did, the title track, Who Are You? That killer intro, the hoo 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 refrain, fantastic. It's almost like you've waited the whole album to get to this song. It's just an unbelievable track. It's got a perfect rock sound to it. It hits all the marks. The drumming is great. It's got a weird kind of funky tempo. Lyrically, it's just, about some of the stuff Pete actually went through, like hanging out with the Sex Pistols, waking up in a gutter, having the policeman tell him to go home. Like, there's some stuff in his life that's very autobiographical that ends up in this track. And it's a song that had been around for a while, albeit in different forms, since about 1976 when they were on tour, till it began to sort of, become the song it became. But the synth work on this song is absolutely a knockout. Having the long version here is great with the extra verse. The radio always cuts that verse out. A lot of greatest hits albums cut that last verse out. Roger's ad-libs throughout this track, I think, are fantastic. I mean, it's just a song that really, really says, we're the Who, we are here, we're gonna rock, we're not old, this is us now. So, just a fantastic track. Here's the back of it. Got the songs up there. This particular record I bought when I was about 15 years old, so I've had this in my collection for a very long time. He said, not that oldly. But it's in fantastic shape. I mean, it's not an album I play a lot on the brown MCA label there. You can't even see it with the lights there. Jeez. Well, you've seen what it looks like. And I also have the picture disc that came out around the same time. Let me show you that one here too, which is pretty cool. Sound-wise, picture discs aren't usually the more... They're not going to sound that great, but still very cool to have. So, yeah, it even says it on here. Sound quality may not be equal to conventional album, which I think is great. But here's the jacket is it's got the hole in it there, so you can see that it's in fact a picture disc. And when you take it out, you got a big hole there, which is cool. And let me show you the actual disc, it just looks awesome to have that on vinyl, on the actual vinyl. And the back is great. I'm so happy they didn't just put a standard back cover picture in the back. They went for a different picture of the guys, which I think is just awesome that they did that. So almost everyone else is wearing the exact same thing they wore on the cover shoot, if not the exact same thing, except for Keith. Classic Keith. Change it up, do his own thing. So yeah, very cool to have that in the collection. I haven't played this exact copy, who knows how long. It's been a very long time since I put the picture disc on. But yeah, this album for me has always been a different Who sound, and I'm wondering if that's why I don't play it as much as I do other albums by the guys. That said, I do think it's a great album. There's nothing wrong with it in that sense. I think some people do sort of knock it because drumming-wise, it's not, Quadrophenia or Tommy or Who's Next. But for me, I don't think that matters because the drumming he brings on this thing, that Keith does on this thing, I think gives it a character and a flavor that is so unique that it sets it apart from other albums that you're not getting, in fact, the same song over again. You're not getting the same old lines. You're not getting the same old sound. So like I said earlier in this review, new song, the story behind it and the images it provokes and the overall message of it doesn't, it's like a false promise. It doesn't add up to what the rest of the album is. The album delivers a lot of fresh new Who at the time. Completely different than what they had done before. So it's fascinating that that is the example that leads the album off, because the album goes in a completely different direction. It's not like they're out doing the same old rock and roll songs. There's some heavy synths on here. There's string work. There's ballads. There's different vocals with Roger going way quiet to way loud. I mean, they really nail a whole different flavor of what the Who can be. And I think Keith's drumming, granted, wasn't what he could do, the best he could do, but it was what he could do at that time. He did do a great job. So I think it's a great album. I really do. And I think that's all I have to say about it. So yeah, The Who. Who are you? The last album of Keith Moon. If I give this thing a rating, which we always do here at Giggens TV, I'm going to probably say like an 8 out of 10 for this one. It's, for me, I think it's an underrated album. I think it deserves more respect and more listens to really appreciate what it is for what it is, not comparing it to everything else. Just take it as it is, as one solid album. And that's it. 8 out of 10. My name is Giggens. This has been The Who. Who are you? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye-bye.